what Decision AI does is really distill expertise and workflow knowledge of industry veterans, and it automates decision making, right? So what I was talking about me and other producers in our brokerage really being the profit bottleneck, how do we take our knowledge and how we counsel our clients and then automate that, at least to a degree, right? Like at Massey Risk, we're never going to automate the full journey, right? But at Agent 3 we are, and Decision AI is the game changer there for us.
Welcome to Pioneers, the show where we explore the intersection between humanity and AI. I'm your host, Ankur Patel. Over the last 10 years, I've built 3 AI startups, written 2 books about the subject, and I run a weekly AI newsletter. I also regularly teach and speak about the topic at conferences. This technology has grown faster than I think any of us could have imagined, and it's making us ask really important questions, such as how ethical is AI? What will this technology look like in a few years, let alone a few months? And most importantly, does it have the power to truly change the world? And what does it mean for you? On this show, I'll be interviewing the founders, operators, and pioneers that are introducing AI into their companies and industries. We'll be asking them the really heavy-hitting questions that make them dig deep into the core of what we do. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Insurance is evolving and fast. While many are still clinging to the traditional models, the future of the industry is being reshaped by AI, automation, and a shift in how we approach risk. Today's guest, Cheynna Massie, is here to break it down for us. We're going to dive into how AI native insurance is setting the stage for something truly revolutionary. Let's talk about the future of brokers, carriers, and everything in between. Cheynna, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ankur. Good to be here. I'm a podcast nerd, so I've been listening to your series for a while.
Amazing. Well, appreciate that. And why don't we start with a little bit of background? So you're very familiar with this world of insurance. Now you're at the intersection of AI and insurance. And how did you get here?
It's been a long path. I'd say a lot of people you talk to in insurance, they're born into it or they fall into it in some weird way. I fell into it. I started in finance on the trading floor doing credit research. And then I moved into mid-market investment banking. So I specialized in recurring revenue businesses and really got a sense for like this unsexy mid-market that can really throw off cash. From there, I went into active commercial insurance operations. So I am managing partner and CFO at Massey Risk, which is a 3rd generation Bay Area commercial insurance brokerage. And I'm also founder at Agent 3, which is an AI native commercial insurance platform that connects SMBs to a marketplace of leading carriers. So here I am now. How did I get involved in AI? About a year and a half ago, I started tinkering, and as many insurance producers, I'm a broker. So back in the day, brokers used to buy lead lists. And I remember the first time I was kind of wowed in a professional setting was when I thought, hey, we're really a referrals based brokerage now, but what if I just did some research on breaking into the cannabis space, like in insuring dispensaries, right? And I was just blown away in 5 minutes, the amount of research I could do, whereas we used to pay for all these crappy lead lists and, it wasn't the decision maker. And so suddenly I thought, wow, this is really going to shift like not only our back office operations, but potentially our sales strategy. And as a banker, I'd always thought that we'd employ some type of roll-up strategy and go out and buy some portfolios of attractive accounts, which brokerages often do, especially with AI coming down the line. And then I just had this thought that, hey, it's beautiful to fix the margins in the back office, but the profit bottleneck is really our brokers. And what if we could take this decision AI, use this generative AI technology to really scale ourselves as brokers and kind of instill our secret sauce, our secret sales sauce. And I think that it's just a powerful technology, that a lot of mid-market businesses can really benefit from, not just on like the back office efficiency, but on the sales front.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have viewed AI as an operational efficiency play.
And that's great. And I mean, automation does reduce expense and such, but I think the way you framed it is the vision that I think a lot of people are starting to get to, which is it can be this great enabler of just top line growth, right? And I generally find that brokers in the insurance sector, they're some of the hungriest to adopt new technology in the sense that they want to drive more business. And if they can find ways to make themselves more competitive among other brokers and winning new business and serving the market, they're going to be more willing to take some risks and adopt new tooling there.
Absolutely. I got to give you a shout out for your thought leadership in the multimodals emails. I think I opened one about insurance the other day and it was like de-risk innovation. I was like, yes, de-risk my innovation. I love that. I definitely feel like people are opening up to it, obviously on the carrier side, a bit more on the brokerage side. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think your background in finance is really incredible because I think and I think there's a little bit of a different frame that I tend to find, and I'm curious sort of what you're seeing is in finance, there is maybe more risk-taking behavior because you generally need to take risk, even not just want, but need to take risk in order to generate outcomes, returns and such. On the insurance side, it's more about managing risk, right? You're trying to find risk mitigation as much as possible. And so it's a little bit of a different frame. You don't want to take too much risk. You'd rather be kind of a fast follower versus maybe a pioneer in the space. But I think given your DNA being in the space, I think you take a maybe more innovative, more pioneering approach to it. But just curious, like, do other people in the insurance sector share that level of enthusiasm and kind of maybe pioneering behavior that you have, or is it a
It's
little
a
bit
funny
different?
question. I was listening to your recent. You were on Sam. I don't know how to say his last name. Sam
Yeah, Arabi.
Arabi.
Yeah, yeah.
Arabi, and just talking about like contrarian views, and even my business partner, because I co-own. I hate to call it legacy, but it's a legacy. It's a traditional brick and mortar insurance brokerage. And when I first brought the idea to him, he was like, "You're effing crazy. Nobody wants to buy insurance from an agent, like an AI agent." And when we first went to carriers, I think that was the initial reception was like, wait, what? What are you talking? Agentic? What is that? Right? And they're like, wait, can you write that word down for us? And again, we were starting with like the sales reps and we had to get up to like the digital distribution decision makers. But I'd say it's a contrarian view that people would rather buy insurance and not interact with a human if they can do so in a way where they feel it's transparent, fair, and they understand why you're offering them the coverage if they need it, how it's relevant to them. It's a contrarian view. And, our legacy brokerage, we have clients who they they want you to pick up the phone. They want an email and they will never want that experience. But I truly believe we're moving towards, we're obviously witnessing a giant shift where I think the preference will be with just one with less human touch. But my motto is you always have a human pick up the phone if they want to talk to a human, right? Like they don't want to talk to a human until they want to talk to a human, and you better have a human.
Yeah, it's a mixture of both, right? And so maybe like I think the big question that comes up in this space is that is traditional insurance brokerage going to eventually be extinct in the sense that almost all of the interactions are going to be AI based. And I think what you're saying, and I'd love to kind of dig more into this, is that there is a time and place for there to be like an AI first experience, and that might be the
Yeah.
default. By the way, that might be the mainstream. But when you want human interaction, you'll want to be able to call someone and have someone answer the line on the other end. So I'm curious how that shifts from where we are today to, let's say, 3 years from now.
I do see a semi-extinction path for agencies that don't, adopt some of these technologies in the back office. You don't have to have a sales agent out there, an AI agent selling to your customers, but I think you become more of like a price taker for acquisitions. And it's just, the evolution path is that you become more of a risk concierge where you're able to operate at this superhuman scale and kind of using AI as your co-pilot to better understand your customers, service them. Because, just as a broker thinking about sales, and this applies to different areas of sales, like every salesperson has their secret sauce. And so it's kind of like, how do you instill that into your process? Like, we have a way of counseling our clients when we intake them, understanding their business, their clients, their contracts, their specific risk profile. And AI provides a way to do this in, minutes versus hours, days. It's pretty incredible. And it's going to be exciting to see what happens in the industry. I do foresee more consolidation.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? Which is like AI is also changing what like the end user wants in terms of their experience. And so I think if they could get faster, more informed responses, regardless of whether there's another AI at the other end, I mean, an AI generating the response on the other end, or it's a human that is leveraging AI to go and gather those insights and deliver better response quality. I think that end result though is like you need AI working in one shape or form to go and be competitive. Otherwise, if you don't adopt, then you end up being kind of a dinosaur in the space, and you just kind of fade out because you're not competitive anymore.
I totally agree. I was talking to an engineer recently, and I was like, when I find out that somebody I utilize for professional services doesn't use AI, I feel at best they're inefficient, right? At worst they're pretty closed-minded, and I have a hard time aligning with that. And I kind of think that will be the sentiment that continues on the rise.
And I think part of it is also a generational thing, right? I think younger generations, they're much more comfortable leveraging AI to go in and shop for policies and ask questions to clarify like different limits and sublimits, and maybe do quote comparison and whatnot. They might not need to be on a phone to go and navigate through that. And I think we're seeing corollaries in some ways to spaces like investment brokerage, right? So on the finance side, people are trading on used to be web apps. Now people trade on mobile and kind of move balances around and diversify the portfolio and such. But then there's an older generation that may feel more comfortable meeting their advisor or broker in person or placing trades over the phone. So part of this is as the population that is purchasing these policies changes, I think you'll have to kind of navigate those waters as well.
Yeah, and we have a large baby boomer clientele to, for lack of a better expression. And some of them, they fax in their application, or they want us to hand pick it up every year. And you better believe we're going to hand pick it up every year, and that's fine. And I forget his last name. You had a guy named Felix on recently for fleet insurance, and he was talking about like how the engineers came in and they had a partner who was like still using a fax machine, and he was just like, just build around it, like it's part of the flow. And that's so characteristic of insurance, where when I came in from banking, my business partner was like, Shay, you got to chill out. Like, this is not banking. And I was like, what is this? Like, why are we why are we filling out all these applications and there's no like standard? And it was hard to understand. So I think there's just a ton of low hanging fruit in the space. On the brokerage side, back office sales, carrier side, underwriting, this is like a renaissance.
Let's talk a little bit about retail policies versus commercial insurance, right? And I think in a majority of people, they probably have purchased a retail policy because they're renters insurance, home insurance, auto insurance, and the like. But could we talk about what the experience is like in the retail world versus the commercial insurance that you do?
Yeah, the retail, I'd say it's homogenous risks, right? So it's, cars, homes are relatively standardized with structured data like, VIN numbers, driver history. Commercial lines, we have a lot of heterogeneous, like non-standardized risks. Every business is different, right? Like a restaurant might have they do have a completely different risk profile than a roofer or like, a software developer. Commercial insurance also comes with a lot of messy, unstructured data, and they have complex portfolio of coverage. So like they have, lots of different lines that they might need. And so this has kind of prevented, I think, this automation migration, as I like to call it. Like my whole thesis centers around this automation migration that's about to happen in insurance. And with Gen AI, it's like this huge unlock, right? That we couldn't do, we couldn't get previously. So I'm here for it, Ankur. And I know you're doing the Lord's work on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I think retail lines, the risk is homogenous. It's generally lower dollar amounts, and I think there has been a higher degree of automation, one way or another, over the many years. I think commercial insurance has been this area where it's esoteric, it's variable. There's really no way until maybe more recently for this to even be attempted via software. It required people that were very well trained, that just knew how to do it. They like lived and breathed it, and they were very prized, and they still are prized, of course. But I think this is where like deep diligence, complex decision making now is becoming viable via software, right? Whereas like 3 years ago, it just wasn't like that. There was really literally no way to go and tackle that problem through software.
Yeah, I mean, look at the digital footprint of most even small businesses now, what you can find, what underwriters can find just for, the knowledge base is far superior than that just a couple years ago, a year ago even. Yeah.
So let's talk about this intelligence revolution that people talk about. I think there's a lot of RPA that people are familiar with, robotic process automation, right? And now we're moving into the world where you're using large language models, the same technology that underpins and things like ChatGPT and Google Gemini and other things. So you're moving into this Gen AI world. Why is it such a big step function change from going from robotic process automation to more generative AI-driven automation?
It really brings decision making into play, like we've talked about, like reasoning over variability, like what I just talked about, the difference between different businesses, the risks they face, the contractual liabilities they face. And RPA really could handle these repetitive processes, but it couldn't handle these heavy hitting issues. And you were talking on Sam's podcast about mortgage underwriting, and that got me really excited just to hear about kind of the automation on that front. Somewhat similar to what we're dealing with here. What Decision AI does is really distill expertise and workflow knowledge of industry veterans, and it automates decision making, right? So what I was talking about me and other producers in our brokerage really being the profit bottleneck. How do we take our knowledge and how we counsel our clients and then automate that, at least to a degree, right? Like at Massey Risk, we're never going to automate the full journey, right? But at Agent 3 we are, and Decision AI is the game changer there for us.
So I want to go back to Massey and then what you're doing with Agent 3 now. Yeah. And I think you mentioned that there is a huge opportunity to take a lot of this newer technology and adopt it in insurance. Could you tell us a little bit more about Agent 3 and the journey you're on there?
So, as I said, we're building a marketplace where businesses have the opportunity to access the best policies and coverages while, getting this expert kind of guidance. And they're getting coverages from the nation's highest rated carriers who compete for their business. And I think this is really kind of the future and what consumers seek to gain from AI, and in a sense is like having carriers or businesses in general compete for your business in a more transparent manner. And so really there's this massive shift. We have this infrastructure alignment happening right now where we've seen a carrier API revolution. It's just a lot more available now, although not all carriers have caught up. There's much more, there's greater access to APIs now. We have this Gen AI reasoning capability that we talked about. And then we have this SMB digital expectation shift, I think, post-COVID, where, some stats show that 85% of SMBs prefer a digital first interaction in insurance. And I feel that as a consumer myself. And so that's part of where this vision comes from. Agent 3 is really the orchestration layer just to connect SMBs with carriers and MGAs. And I think that the timing is really optimal for something like this, given we talked about the stats, the automation stats, where the commercial market is 8% automated versus 70% of personal lines premiums being automated.
Yep.
And if you really extrapolate that out and look, it's realistic to assume that we can reach somewhere around 45% of premiums automated by 2030. Again, some premiums will never be automated. And those are the types of clients that we handle at Massey Risk, where it's like, maybe you're a publicly traded enterprise, right? You're not going to go online and get your insurance. Maybe you just, got your Series B, you need some complex policies. So as I said, I think there will always be a place in the market for these risk concierges, these higher end risk concierges who are negotiating, handling gray areas, doing the back and forth with carriers. But I do see this massive TAM expansion opportunity in the market where, if the market's roughly 150 billion right now for P&C premiums, only 12 billion of it is automated, right? So if we're looking at like a 5 to 6 time TAM expansion probably by 2030, and hey, I go where the money is. So I see an opportunity that we can now provide this white glove service and give everyone a personalized experience. And again, I have to say that some of the motivation behind this came from the fact that at Massey Risk, we have a lot of people come to us with policies they bought on insurtech platforms. They either bring us policies they bought or they bring us quotes and they say, hey, is this right? Like, is this the right coverage?
Yeah.
And a large portion of the time they come to us and they've been misclassified. They do not have the correct limits in place. Maybe they have a customer contract stipulating a 24-hour breach notification, in the event of a cyber breach. Maybe their policy only covers 48 or 72 hours. So there's like this hole in the market, I think, where the broker economics don't work for the smaller business and lower mid-market businesses, like, premiums sub 20,000, definitely sub 10,000. And they get kind of marginalized and ignored by a lot of brokers. And this is just that opportunity to step in and give them the white glove service that we would give any customer, but then, without the broker fees and without that feeling of like, hey, is my broker doing the right thing by me? The goal is really to just be like that transparent, neutral layer, like the trusted concierge, the neutral party.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of good ground conditions for this because I think you're seeing more API availability from the carriers themselves, right? And so there's a little bit more of just data being available and being accessible in ways that it wasn't many years ago. And then I think you're right, like the expectations of businesses change. Like they want something that's the software first or AI first in their response. And I think the segment that you're talking about, like the 10,000 and sub 10,000, sub 20,000 premium, they were just like an underserved portion of the market. It didn't make sense for human brokers to go serve that market because it wasn't really worth their time. They had to focus on the larger opportunities. And I think what AI does is it allows you to kind of have that human touch, but delivered at a price point because of AI. That you could give that personalized touch to a much smaller business and make sure that they get the adequate coverage that they need, and you don't have misclassification and things like that. So I think it's a phenomenal segment of the market to go after that only is viable because of some of the advancements in technology in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I was listening to a pod. This is a common theme, like the A16Z pod months ago, and Jensen Huang was on with Arthur Mensch, the founder of, it's one of like the open source LLMs. It's escaping me, but Jensen was like, go out and build. Like, he was talking to everyone. He's like, don't wait for somebody to build it for you. And in a sense, like you're building it for mid-market businesses, but it was inspiring because I think for a while I was under this assumption, and I think a lot of people were like, oh, one day AGI is just going to like pop up and we're all going to be effed and knowledge work is just going to be like extinct, right? And I don't see it that way anymore. And I think like the vision is shifting a little bit and we're all realizing, we're all awakening to it. But I will say, like, he's got some great media training and he's smooth. And I was like, okay, Jensen, I'll go and build this.
Yeah, he has some incredible quotes, and he's like very visionary. But I think the core of the message is like, you have the technology at your fingertips. The moment in time is now to go build, especially if you have a unique frame on the world and a unique perspective that you've accumulated, which in your case you do, right? And I think that insurance is one of those spaces where it requires new levels of thinking and innovation to go change the way things should be done. In a way, it's very hard because insurance has been around for so long, right? It's like in some cases there are carriers that have been around for over a century, and you can just imagine, how do you get that innovative energy? And unfortunately, I think it is companies like Agent 3 that you've started, but also companies or segments like MGAs. I'd love to chat more about that because I think that is also changing the way that underwriting is getting done, and you're seeing some great adoption of AI there too, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. MGAs, I do think that they're going to start popping up more and more and more. I think that the underwriting technology, and we talked about kind of the digital footprint that's out there, is taking underwriting, that used to take weeks, maybe minutes, days now. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And I think, we both expect a lot of kind of vertical MGAs to pop up, maybe like in these micro niches, right? Where they have the speed advantage, they have this like narrower appetite, and they can bring better pricing accuracy. I think the topic of pricing is really interesting, and like right size risk, right? Like the right price and just customization of policies. You talked to, was it Henry Tam at Next Insurance, kind of about the potential evolution of like customized policies and where that's going. And I definitely see a path to that. And again, Agent 3 is definitely being built with that in mind. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, the other big challenge that we see, right? So, like, I think we talked about the adoption of AI, where it can solve problems. How do you make this more automated, deliver better user experiences and such? But you're also seeing an aging out of the population in insurance. So some of the best underwriters and claims adjusters, they're just getting older. They're going to retire. They have such deep expertise that's going to really walk out the door. And I don't know if that many young people are entering the space in the ways that we need in order to fill that gap, right? So I'm curious, what do you see that's coming online? I mean, it could be AI, right? That's going to help bridge that gap of all the experts leaving, and then there's this void in terms of people knowing how to go and do some of this complex work.
I think people like you guys are going to fill that gap, right? Because we're going to take the knowledge of industry experts and understand the workflows, and then distill that knowledge in. So that's how I really see the future. I don't necessarily see like the number of brokers increasing or like the number of people in the insurance industry increasing. I don't know. How do you see it?
But I think there's definitely a sense of urgency, and I sense it. I feel it. It's something that we often lean into ourselves because these individuals, they're so valuable to the space. I mean, insurance is not some nice to have; it's a must have, right? It's a thing that we often take for granted, but we ought not to. It's something that is essential. It's part of functioning markets, and the people that know how to do this best are about to retire. And they're going to retire sooner than we think, right? Next couple of years, a lot of them, like the majority of them in some of these roles. And so you have this small window of time that you can go work with them to distill what they know, what's in their heads, all that expertise that they've accumulated, and find ways to distill it in form of documentation, standard operating procedures, different underwriting and claims processing guidelines. But I think the next best thing you could do beyond just having it documented, because it will take time to train young people on how to go and use these operating procedures, is if you can go and bring all of those operating procedures that you design with those experts and then train different AI agents that can operate and support some of the younger generation that's coming in to go and fill the void in underwriting, claims processing, and brokerage and things like that. And I think that is that's a massive enabler. And I don't think of that as like a nice to have. I think that is going to be a necessity. That's the only way we're going to have that labor gap get addressed. And so a lot of people think, okay, well, AI is going to cause job loss. In this case, you're having a tough time filling some of these jobs, and AI is going to help fill that void. So
Yeah.
in some ways, it's the boon that all of us need to keep this industry functioning as it should.
I will tell you, if it were easy to hire new producers, we would be doing it, like great new producers.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
So as there's maybe more options, better price transparency, maybe better visibility for customers around things that they shop for and such. How do you win? Like who ends up winning? Does it all come down to whoever has the best price and the best customer experience?
It's not price. So insurance,
Okay.
I'd say that the lower end of the market, maybe like the independent contractor or something, it's a price game. But as organizations scale, it's not a price game, it's a trust and relationship game. And it's an education game, right? Because 96% of small businesses fail a basic insurance quiz and they really don't understand it. And part of that is hand holding the client through helping them understand exactly why they need certain coverages, how it's relevant to them, the ROI, what it would look like if there were a claim. So I definitely, I think it's so much more than price. And I think that if we're not differentiating with technology and specialized knowledge, you're in trouble right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the marketplace that you're assembling, right? This orchestration you speak to around the carriers and getting quotes and such. And on the other side is the MGAs, right? And I'm curious, like, which side of the market do you build first? How do you kind of get that activity going? Because with all marketplaces, the challenge is, and if it's two-sided, which side do you kind of lean on as kind of the bigger enabler for there to be healthy activity there?
Yeah, we build out the carrier side, like the core, I'd say our anchor carriers, which we've been doing. And then we fill in the marketplace with lots of MGAs and, API forward carriers. And there are actually a lot of them. We've had an amazing, I'd say, like reception where people are like, yeah, we're interested in this. And even at the major carriers, it's been really cool to see how tech forward some of them are, like not just with their sales reps all the way up to the people obviously running their digital distribution. And then there's stark contrast where there's other major carriers who, are not very flexible with APIs, don't have much capability. It's interesting, but it's been amazing to get all the support. And we obviously have decades of carrier relationships through Massey Risk. And so they understand how we underwrite in general. And, they know our loss runs, they can see all of that. And so that's really helped to build the Agent 3 project and onboard carriers throughout the build.
Yeah, because I think relationships and trust are so important here, right? So it's like if you know technology and you come in, you're like, hey, look, I'm going to change your entire world, but you don't have a deep appreciation and understanding and awareness of how the space works.
Right.
There's a degree of skepticism that people that are insiders have. I think you're able to navigate a lot of those waters just given your background and the work that you've done. So I think that helps address some of the trust issue, right? Because I think the other fear that people have is like, AI sometimes is overhyped, and people are aware of that. Like, AGI is just right around the corner. Same thing with super intelligence, and then you hear headlines like 95% of AI pilots fail, and then it's like hard to believe. Like, do I believe in a Sam Altman's version of the world, which is like super intelligence is going to happen in 2026, or is it that only 5% of pilots kind of see the light of day? Like, which world is it? So
it was interesting. I went into a meeting with one carrier in the beginning, a giant, big name carrier, and they were like, Cheynna, there's no way we're doing this. And so by the end of the lunch, they were like, listen, there's no way we would have done this 2 months ago, but, like, bring us your MVP and, like, let's sandbox this. And so I think people really are changing. It's like you have to explain and maybe explain again.
Yeah.
But
there's a level of nurturing that needs to happen, right?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, nurturing.
And I think for like the end user, I think they want more of these capabilities is what I've found, which is like they have all these experiences as consumers in their individual lives, and they're demanding similar levels of service when it comes to purchasing insurance policies and such. So I think the pressure from like the demand side of things is there. It's a question of how does the rest of the market address that?
Yes. Before we move on from carriers, which like niches do you think are the most ripe for automation with like underwriting? And in the work you're doing, where do you see the most automation happening? Is it with legacy carriers? Is it with MGAs?
So the legacy carriers, I think all of them, they're interested in exploring this technology, right? But because they have in some ways more to lose, they have reputational risk. There's a lot more at stake. And in some ways, like they don't necessarily have to go and adopt the latest technology right away. They've been around for decades, or in some cases, centuries. So they can kind of go and make sure that the decisions that they make around the adoption of this technology are sound. And so they're just more methodical and therefore also slower in their evaluation adoption cycle. But I do think there is a level of awareness and appetite to learn and experiment and go through that process. But the real adoption is happening with the MGAs, right? It's happening with brokers also because they're producers. They want to have a competitive advantage to go and win in the market. And that's where we find a lot of like faster evaluation cycles, more adoption. I think they're just more acutely aware that if they want to win and make their mark in the space, this is something they absolutely have to do. It's not a nice to have, it's a necessity. And so I think that's sort of where the early wins are happening. And I think the carriers, the traditional carriers, while they're interested, they have a lot of dollars to spend theoretically, they're going to be a little bit more slower to move. I think in some ways, we also find that insurance carriers also look at some of the big enterprise financial institutions as just good like role models to kind of see where are they starting, what technologies are they adopting, how are they adopting it. So there's a little bit of that. Let's wait and see how the rest of the other enterprise companies are adopting this before we move in full earnest, right? So I think it's been a lot more measured than maybe a lot of people kind of make it out to be among enterprise carriers. But the rest of the segment, particularly mid-market and especially MGAs, like more of the tech-enabled insurtechs out there, they're much, much faster at adoption.
Okay. Good to hear.
But given that there's so many insurtechs and MGAs, there's just a lot of innovation that's happening, and it's a really healthy thing. We also see that a lot of those traditional carriers, they innovate through acquisition, right? And so I'm curious, like, what you think the M&A story will be in this space in the years to come.
Well, we see Munich Re with Next Insurance. So, but in general, when I think about kind of multiples for independent brokerages and what's been happening, it's interesting. The multiples have been very resilient despite interest rate changes. And we know that the revenue is recurring and sticky and renewal driven. I believe our position is that Gen AI will obviously keep compressing costs and expanding margins and make scale economics even stronger. And we'll see more consolidation. I think that, those brokers that adopt AI will become either strategic buyers or, valuable tuck-ins. And those who resist could become more like distressed sellers competing on price only. I do see like tech stack and automation rates becoming a valuation input in the future.
Yeah, it's been interesting because the larger carriers are looking to acquire innovative startups and scaling kind of what would otherwise be mid-market players as a way to innovate. But I think some of the consolidation is also being driven by private equity firms that are finding a good platform. Maybe they have a platform, and as you mentioned, the tuck-ins, right? They're finding where can they go and take a company that maybe has been a little bit more resistant to adopting AI as an example. And so all of a sudden that same company with the same distribution and maybe they have sound fundamentals, if you go and introduce AI top down through the tuck-in and being a majority owner, you could now use AI to improve margins and therefore make the business much more competitive. And now the business is immediately worth a lot more. And so that's kind of the investment thesis, is not just to go and use it for inorganic growth. You have a playbook that you can put every single tuck-in through in order to go and basically make the business more valuable. And I think you're seeing a lot of great activity like that with private equity groups. I think that's only going to snowball. I mean, we have some perspective on private equity because we do work with private equity firms from some of our finance work on that channel. And they're looking at AI as this playbook to design to put all their portcos through. And that is part of the diligence that they do when they think about which companies to acquire, because they know that if they have a really good AI playbook that they could deploy, then they can view acquisitions from a different lens than the traditional let's run go to market or financial engineering or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's a powerful platform for sure.
I'd love to kind of get your perspective, and I think you've already shared some of this, but I want to go and see if you have any closing thoughts on what we should expect from this space in like the next 3 years or so, especially since you are one of the players that's really trying to make some big disruption happen with what you're doing with Agent 3.
I'd say I'll reiterate kind of that white glove experience, and I think there's going to be this renaissance of in democratization, in service, customization. And then, just on the sales side, like I said, I follow a lot of these agentic customer service businesses. Decagon is one of them. At Massie Risk, one of their competitors is our client, so I follow it closely. I was listening to Harry Stebbings' pod with Jesse Zhang, the founder of Decagon, and Harry asked him, what's the next frontier on this agentic stuff? And he was like, sales. And I couldn't agree more. I think that it's the most exciting frontier yet. The amount you can scale and just lower the customer acquisition cost is incredible. And that's what we're focused on at Agent 3. And that's what I expect to see a lot of in the mid-market.
I love that. I also love that podcast. And I listened to that same episode. It's a great episode. Because I think a lot of people view, basically voice AI and voice AI agents such as customer support, like post-sales support, right? And I think if you could make this part of the production itself, it dramatically reframes the use of AI. It's more top-line enabling, right? And as you said, it's hard to hire great producers and train them and whatnot. So if you take the hard work of training an AI version of that, that's a big, massive enabler for business.
Yeah. And I just say I was talking about every salesperson has their secret sauce, and the way we might counsel a factory owner would be different than, a Series A startup, and it might be different than we'd handle a roofing business. And suddenly Gen AI enables this shape shifting of your sales agents that is really powerful.
Amazing. Well, Shay, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Where can people learn more about you as well as Agent 3?
Find me at massierisk.com or agent3three.com. That's agent, the number 3, and then three.com. Yeah, check us out.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Shay.
Appreciate it. Keep doing the Lord's work out here automating. We're rooting for you.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Will do.
Thank you.